Directed by Ron Howard and written by Jonathan and Lawrence Kasdan, Solo, a Star Wars story is the latest spin-off in the never-ending Star Wars franchise, and it stars Alden Ehrenreich in the titular role that was earlier played by Harrison Ford. And I was not looking forward to this film. Everything about this screamed disaster, and after the disappointments of Rogue One and especially Last Jedi, I was just done with the Star Wars films. But still, I went and saw this film just for the sake of it, and honestly, it was fun. It was a perfectly fun movie, something that I was not expecting at all. I went in with very low expectations, dare I say almost expecting to hate this film. Just going, oh well, it's an unnecessary spin-off, and while it is an unnecessary film, it is a perfectly enjoyable one. As far as summer blockbusters, this year has been very lame, as of right now in my opinion, and this one is one of the better ones, honestly, even, at least for me. If you've watched the previous reviews you know why, but I like this more than Avengers Infinity War, and Deadpool 2, and yeah, I'm just as surprised as you are. And what are the good things? Well, first of all, surprisingly enough, the story. And the best thing about it is that it's very simple. It isn't necessarily about the origins of Han Solo. He's already in his early 30s or late 20s, I don't know. You do get to see how, for example, he received this blaster, you get to know why his name is Solo, you get to know a lot of shit that probably you didn't even care about. It does feel like a 2-hour version of the opening of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, you know, where he gets his whip, he gets his hat, he gets his scar, everything is explained there, but in the context of that film it makes sense. Here it's just, it is a fan service film. It is exactly that, and if you're a super fan, you're gonna remember every single reference that is in this film. Some of those just flew over my head, but the best thing about them is that there is very little attention put on them. I don't know if it makes sense. Pretty much, they just happen. There isn't that big of a focus on certain aspects, except for the very stupid explanation of why his last name is Solo, which is pretty much the same thing as calling someone Snow or Sand in the Game of Thrones universe. That's the basic explanation, honestly. But I was quite surprised by, for example, he receives his blaster and it's just, take this weapon, and it's a blaster. And you're like, okay, it's a blaster, he's gonna use it. That's fine, that's perfectly fine. How he meets Chewbacca, it's a fun interaction, fun scene. And that's the key word for this film. It's fun, even though it is not a film for families necessarily, because that's another thing that I really liked. The humor is kept to a minimum. And had Lord Miller, whatever, the previous two directors done with this film, it probably would have been more of a comedy, probably was more of a comedy, but I actually really enjoyed the darker tone that this film took, even though there are some lighter moments and some very out-of-place characters. I know that a lot of people are loving the android in this film, L37 something, and there are some moments where just pretty much this android who wants equal rights for other robots, and felt weird. Very out of place, like, what? It's played for comedy, but also for drama. It just did not work for me at all. It was weird interactions with her. But other than that, the newer characters that they're introduced, some last longer than others. You've got, for example, very short appearances. Thandie Newton was pretty good in this. You also get Woody Harrelson, who actually has a pretty beefy role in this film. I was not expecting it, but he was pretty great, and we all love Woody Harrelson, honestly. And also Emilia Clarke, who she seems like a nice person. I'm not the biggest fan of her, but she was pretty good in this film, actually. She and everyone else has pretty interesting arcs, even though the one who has less arcs of everyone is Han Solo himself, which was weird, but I actually quite liked Alden Ehrenreich. He was pretty good in this film. Watching the different clips and previews and whatnot on the internet, it looked bad, really bad, the interactions between the characters. But watching them in context, which is usually the thing that everyone should do, myself included, it actually worked very well. I actually really enjoyed how it was portrayed in this film, and kudos to you, man, because fantastic, very good performance. Nothing groundbreaking, but it feels at the same time as the same character, but also something new, which is something that I always appreciate. And last but not least, Donald Glover, who plays Lando Calrissian. It was fun. It was pretty good performance. Yes, that's the thing. That's the key word to this film, as I've said. It's a fun film. There are the usual problems, like the main villain, played by Paul Bettany, who is pretty much non-existent. Some of the cinematography, surprisingly enough, the film is shot by the same cinematographer of Arrival, of Ain't Them Bodies Saint, and there were some very dark shots in this film that were kind of hard to watch. You're like, it's a bit dark, lighten up the image a bit, please. But other than that, yes, it's pretty nice cinematography for the most part. And another standout was the soundtrack, and it's made by John Powell, a composer who sadly doesn't get that big of a recognition in Hollywood, but I love him. He's the one who's made the soundtrack to How to Train Your Dragon, to Face Off. He's a great composer. And here, this is probably the best soundtrack in any of the non-John Williams movies. It's actually even better than the soundtrack we've got for episodes 7 and 8. This was a pretty great soundtrack, something that is actually worth listening to. It feels very Star Warsy, but also very fresh to listen, and it has heightened the experience while watching the film, which is something that I was completely surprised by. And yes, they have the usual cues for the original John Williams score sometimes, but even there, it works in this film. There isn't an overabundance of the usual tracks like we had with The Last Jedi. So guys, there is honestly nothing else to say about this film. It was fun, an enjoyable time, and probably that's because I had extremely low expectations, probably because I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan. So even when we got that cameo at the end, pretty much everyone in the theater was like, huh, it's that guy. Yeah, I was expecting more excitement from the audience, but this was surprising. But yeah, there are plenty of cameos, references, the acting is pretty good, the story is very simple and effective, very direct, direction style kept to a minimum, but it's an effective film, and honestly Ron Howard has become kind of a go-to studio director recently. He hasn't made all that many great films, but it's enjoyable. And honestly, after so many boring blockbusters that we've got, enjoyable feels oh so good. But still guys, have you watched Solo: A Star Wars Story? Do you like or do you dislike it? Tell me in the comments below. Thanks for watching, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.